Welcome! My name is Francesca Leoni and I am the curator of Islamic art here at the Ashmolean. I'm delighted to welcome you to Dia al-Azzawi, Painting Poetry, which is an exhibition dedicated to this important Iraqi contemporary artist. Dia Azzawi is known for powerful, large-scale, colorful compositions, but we chose to focus on one specific genre, which he named dafatir. This is an Arabic word, a plural Arabic word, which means notebooks, artist notebooks. And it really has the shape of a book-like object, which combines words and images. As an Islamicist myself, I did find this type of work very attractive because it reminded me of Islamic manuscripts. But dafatir really work in a very different way. The poetry and the images interact in ways that are not like the traditional Islamic manuscripts in which the image illustrates the words, but the image becomes a very passionate, personal response to the verses. Dafatir are also very important to understand how the work of these artists developed, because he was very much influenced by Iraqi and Arab poetry in general, and he drew inspiration from a number of different poets that were prominent obviously in 20th century Iraq, which is the country he's from, but also Arab poets from across the Arab world. And there are a number of them that are featured in the exhibition with whom he established long-lasting partnerships. You can think about Saadi Youssef, Adonis, Mahmoud Darwish, and these are names that are extremely popular still today. These are highly celebrated. Similar to the elusive quality of their poetry, the art of the Azzawi really develops in response to these poems in a free and creative way, leading really to the development of his hallmark style, which is marked by bold colors, strong lines, and figures, and a terrific draftsmanship. Painting poetry is organized in 4 sections with a little introduction and a sort of coda, which is not installed in Gallery 8, which is the main site of the exhibition, but rather in the Islamic Middle East Gallery. The 4 sections really introduce the topic of dafatir to our audience, but also the very special relationship that the Azzawi has with poetry. And in fact, the very start of the exhibition spotlights his encounter with the poet Muzaffar al-Nawab, and we have a splendid painting on loan from the Burjeel Foundation in Sharjah that really encapsulates the way in which not only the dafatir but more broadly the whole practice of the Azzawi was impacted by his reading and interaction with literature, with poetry more broadly. And this first section really breaks down, if you wish, some elements, some characteristics that recur across his works by pairing them with historic objects from the Ashmolean Museum collection. So we start with objects associated with ancient Mesopotamia, and particularly the carved figurines of Assyrian and Sumer, and we move on to things like the myth of Gilgamesh, which is an idea, which is a concept actually that he adopts and returns in his work, not only in the context of the dafatir, but in his drawings, in his larger scale paintings. And we then move on to works that really show the creation of a language that is made both of words and images. And this new visual poetry, how he calls it, is what eventually will come to define the composite language that we do see developing and evolving in the genre of dafatir. The subsequent section, the second section, introduces the earliest dafatir, which are black and white works, and which are a little bit in contrast with the way in which Azzawi's work normally looks. You know, this work is full of color, joy, and life, but the early dafatir are actually almost black and white. They have a monochromatic palette, and they are in a way infused and inspired by the tragedy of conflict. So what the visitor sees is actually the impact that different types of conflict and war have had in the whole practice of Azzawi himself. And visitors will also be able to see some of the so-called war diaries, which were compiled as visual testimonies during the First Gulf War in the early 90s. And that's also the point of the exhibition, where the only or the main known daftar, known book-like object and largest object in the exhibition is actually installed. This is a 10-meter tapestry, panorama of destruction, based on a drawing that was completed in 2017 through 2022. So it's a very recent work, which was in fact developed and woven specifically for this exhibition. And this work in itself is a masterpiece to behold. The third section is where the visitor really confronts the range of daffatir that Dia Azzawi has produced since the early 80s all the way to today. And so we start seeing the color, we start seeing the power of the line and the power of the way in which he as a painter responds and echoes the creativity of his many poetic partners, both male and female. And then eventually, in the last section of the exhibition, something about his way of working comes to the fore. And this has to do with the way that Azzawi defies genres. The daffatir themselves look like books, but are not really books. The way in which he developed them means that they almost turn into sculptures, three-dimensional objects of their own, in which the text becomes a smaller element of a much more complex combination of forms and colors and shapes. And so the fourth section is one where our ideas about what a book is or what a sculpture is are effectively tested. And also the place where then the exhibition connects to our tail end in Islamic Middle East, because it's up there that we not only look at the way in which medieval Iraqi arts, particularly manuscript book arts, impacted the way in which Dia Azzawi was thinking about this form of art, but also the way in which subsequent generations of Iraqi artists responded to the art form of daffatir. And so the coda is really an homage to the master, Azzawi himself, but also a way to see how daffatir as a genre thrived over the various decades all the way to today.